Look, in no way am I saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers should make a drastic change or really any change in week 11. But at some point, they have to acknowledge that they have a problem, and that problem is their quarterback. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/all Steelers talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers moved to 6-3 with a victory over the Green Bay Packers, a game that once again, start to finish, kind of felt like it was in the Pittsburgh Steelers' hands. They moved to another winning record, or at least headed that way, and at this point, they're pretty locked into the playoffs in the AFC North race. They look really strong at this point when it comes to their postseason potential. The back half of this season is, well, outside of some divisional games, relatively easy. Everything says that the Pittsburgh Steelers should finish out this year strong, should make the playoffs. But once they get there, that's the biggest question. But that's step two. Step one is just to have a winning record, return to the postseason, kind of scratch last year and forget about it. That's cool. And that's the Pittsburgh Steelers' first goal. And from there, they could take it wherever they want. If their defense is good enough to give them a run in the postseason, awesome. If their running game and their offensive line is now strong enough to make them an actual threat against some of the best teams in the NFL, great. But if we're going to be realistic, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think a huge chunk of those watching the Pittsburgh Steelers, have a limitation on this team, and their expectations end once they have to battle a quarterback or a team with an offense that is going to cause a shootout. If this is a game that is over 25 points, the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't going to be able to hang around. And up until this point, the argument was, well, it's Matt Canada's fault. It's the offensive coordinator's fault. He's the reason that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not scoring points and having all of these issues. And I'm not going to sit here and defend Matt Canada. What I'm going to say is, at this point, heading into week 11, Kenny Pickett coming off of 2 back-to-back pretty bad games. The fourth quarter Kenny thing, it's starting to hit a point where maybe it's time to take a real look at this quarterback situation and acknowledge that there's an issue. Kenny Pickett finished 14 of 23 for 126 yards. He had a 75.6 passer rating against the Green Bay Packers. Should have thrown an interception, probably should have thrown a fumble because the screen or the out to Jaylen Warren was most certainly a backwards pass. Shout out to the refs. Sometimes you win one and you get a call that turns your way. The interception, I think, was out of bounds, but again, awful decision. And the entire game, you sat there and you started to think, okay, well, fourth quarter Kenny will come and the Pittsburgh Steelers are keeping this close, so things will turn around and they'll win this game. This is a game that the Pittsburgh Steelers will win. You felt that start to finish. And then the fourth quarter rolled around and Kenny Pickett was just as bad as he was the first 3 quarters. And at this point, you have to start asking questions. Look, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the end of this season should most certainly move on from Matt Canada. There is no reason to keep your offensive coordinator when the entire fan base is against him. And at this point, he hasn't really done anything to say, oh yeah, this offense is remarkable. It's headed in great places. No. I think honestly, the success that the Pittsburgh Steelers have found on offense is more of an indication that they should make a change, is another reason why they should acknowledge Matt Canada should go, and also maybe that they should be more realistic about Kenny Pickett. Because look at what the Pittsburgh Steelers have done. They made a change at inside linebacker over the offseason because after years of trying, they realized, yeah, we need better talent. They went out and got better talent. And therefore, before the injuries, they found success. They just did the same with the offensive line, moving Broderick Jones to the starting right tackle position, and instantly everything improved. The running game is finally here. Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are a great 1-2 punch, and there is no more conversation about whether or not Jaylen Warren should bench Najee Harris because Najee just isn't a good running back. No, it's all positive because both guys are contributing well because the offensive line is finally something that the Pittsburgh Steelers could run with. They did the same on the defensive line heading into last season, and more so into this season. They did the same at depth at outside linebacker heading into this season, and they saw success at all of these positions. Every single time the Pittsburgh Steelers finally said, hey, we have to stop being stubborn and try to make what works or what we have work, and instead find the talent to compete at an NFL level and compete successfully, they have, well, found success. And it's time to do the same thing with quarterback. You don't bench Kenny Pickett during this season. You don't even consider it. This is not Mitch Trubisky's job to compete for, or Mason Rudolph's turn to see if he could make things happen outside of what is already being done through the run game and through the defense. No. And just like Matt Canada, you're not going to go out and get somebody new in the middle of the season and have expectations that this quarterback off the street is going to turn your football team around. And you shouldn't even consider that. And the Pittsburgh Steelers won't. Kenny Pickett is your guy for the rest of the season. He should probably be your guy heading into next season, and you just see what happens. But when you're realistic about the situation, when you really look at it and say, okay, this is a Super Bowl team, you have to acknowledge that, yes, the window is open and your quarterback is going to hold you back. And therefore, if he doesn't develop into a Super Bowl winning quarterback, you must try and find another one somewhere. Because that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers are. The window did not close. We talked all offseason about how, Kenny Pickett has opened the window for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is their Super Bowl window. They have 3 to 5 years. This is when they could get things done. And you said that with a side of caution before training camp. You said, yeah, well, you also have to acknowledge this probably isn't the year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It will come, but it's not just yet. But Kenny Pickett gives you hope. The preseason comes, and those expectations skyrocket. Oh, the window's open and this could be the year. The Pittsburgh Steelers could most certainly go out and win a Super Bowl. Maybe they'll shock the world. There were people all over the place, myself included, that believed that, yeah, maybe this Steelers team was built to make a run, a pretty crazy one. And that was because of the belief that I had in the offense and the belief that I had in Kenny Pickett. And then the regular season came and that fell flat. And immediately you start thinking this isn't it. The Steelers might not make the playoffs, and then they start winning, and you're going, okay, well, they'll probably make the playoffs, but can they compete with the Patrick Mahomes and the Miami Dolphins and the Baltimore Ravens? And I get that one's got an asterisk to it, but it's still a top-tier team in the AFC with a really strong offense. And you just don't feel as confident, and that's because of your quarterback. And it's very simple. The Steelers have a quarterback problem. You don't go and fix it right now. I don't think you can fix it. You keep your faith in Kenny Pickett. There's no reason to give up on this kid. There's no reason to sit around and say Kenny's the biggest problem and he's unfixable and it's game over and the Pittsburgh Steelers season is a lost cause. No, you keep trying and you hope that one day Kenny Pickett goes out there and changes the entire narrative. That's what you hope happens. And you continue to build into this guy and try to do what you can do as an organization to make that happen. Because best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett eventually develops into a Super Bowl winning quarterback. That is the best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the realistic viewpoint right now also has to include that, yeah, at the end of the season, chances are you look somewhere else just to bring in healthy competition. And that healthy competition can't be a Mitch Trubisky or Mason Rudolph or somebody along those lines. It has to be somebody who's going to come in here, and if it wasn't for Kenny Pickett, would already be assumed the starter, would be a guy that could take a team however far they want to go. That's who the competition should be. Give Kenny Pickett a real battle to prove, hey, I am the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if he doesn't win that, well, you figure that out afterwards and you probably move on. But if he does win it, great. He's still your quarterback. He's still your guy, and you give him another opportunity. It's not time to give up on Kenny Pickett. It is time to acknowledge that he is the biggest problem for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, and that he is the reason that they're being held back. And that's just as true as it gets. Again, you move on from Matt Canada. This is not an excuse to defend the offensive coordinator. It's just not. It's an acknowledgement that every single time the Pittsburgh Steelers have found NFL-level talent, star level talent in the NFL and added it to their roster and then added it to their starting lineup, they've found success. And there's a reason for that. And it's very self-explanatory and very easy to see. And at some point, whether that's next year or during the offseason or who knows when, they have to do the same at quarterback.